What just happened?
What just happened?
What just happened?
What just happened?
What the f happened?
What just happened? I'm Dan. That's Julia. And today we're here to talk Only Murders in the Building, Season 3, Episode 7, called CoBro. We just did a theory video. We shined a lot of light on Dicky, and we were pulling back on Tobert a little bit. And isn't it funny? This episode did that exact same thing. The exact same thing. Now it's Episode 7, so we got 8, 9, and 10 left. My only thing that's kind of throwing me off is it a little too early for all this Dicky suspicion for it to actually be him. It's just
that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Just a smidge, you know. They really pulled back on their Tobert, so maybe they're pulling back to have it be him.
Possibly, but I do think what we see this episode kind of gives more credence to the whole Dicky being the son of Loretta thing.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Because like he specifically mentions that he was adopted. So like
my folks adopted me when they thought they couldn't have kids, but then they had Ben.
All right, let's just jump right into it. So we have a opening monologue from Uma.
Believe it or not, I love people. Some people.
Who hasn't really been that big of a character this season.
I was going to say, we got some return faces this episode.
Yeah, you know, maybe her handkerchief is going to be like a huge evidence, and that's why they brought that into play this episode. We'll get to it, what she did with it and everything. The opening scene, it had her looking at Ben's dead body in the elevator, and it like focused in on the handkerchief. So I think that's one of those check off guns type things where show it, it's important type of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I got from it. After that, she meets up with Charles. It turns out he quit the musical.
Ah, you got shit canned.
It was ruining my life, my engagement, my sanity, my relationship with President McKinley. President McKinley is a fish.
That's another big plot point this episode. We'll come back to it because they talk later. It's time for Mabel to move out. She's moving out of the Arconia. She's with Theo, who we haven't seen this season, right? I don't think we've seen him at all this season. And then that's what you mean by return faces. That's what you're saying. Turns out that Dicky is having a silent auction for Ben's movie stuff today, and they're going to go to it. So Cliff, Donna, and Oliver are all together trying to find Charles's replacement. Not going well, and then Cliff has a funny moment where he stress dances and
It's like ancient crusty lips.
Cliff, darling, please. You know how upsetting it is for me when you stress dance.
I felt that. Like, I feel like that's something I would do.
yeah.
It's great.
So he's stress dancing. Donna doesn't like when he does that. And Oliver is trying to look at the bright side, saying, well, Charles wasn't passionate, so let's keep looking. Then they get word of a big name coming through.
The ringer from your middle school play? Some less famous offspring of Mark Platt? Sweet mother of Sondheim.
Because of Cliff. Turns out to be Matthew Broderick. Really fun cameo this episode.
Matthew Broderick! I've had sex dreams about this moment.
I think that was fun.
I was very happy about that.
Yeah. And who, in Charles's mind, stole Ferris Bueller from him. But
he was like, you were 41.
Yeah.
This is not the first time Matthew has swooped in and stolen a role from me.
For the millionth time, you would not have been a good Ferris Bueller. You were 41.
I think Matthew Broderick was just that person to come in and have a little bit comedic relief. And, you know, that's probably his only episode this season. But then we get Theo and Mabel going to the auction. And this is what we were talking about earlier with a lot of Dicky stuff this episode.
Yeah.
Did you notice when he says,
Sorry. God, even after he's dead, everyone's just trying to make a buck off my brother. It's fucking gross.
And then he immediately screams out,
hey, excuse me, there's a minimum bid on this of $5,000.
So it's like he's doing the same thing that he just complained about, right?
Yeah,
he doesn't look
but
good.
I guess it's different for him though, because like fans doing it, like Ben doesn't owe them anything, but like Dicky has basically run his entire life.
And then quick scene with Matthew Broderick says he's method. He wants to find out information on this character. And then he has the questionable line.
From my role in election, I started teaching high school and dating some students. Okay.
So yeah, I think he was just comedic relief this episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charles is bummed they moved on so quickly, but then he's like, all right, I'm not just gonna wallow. Let me get back into the case. He gathers the hankies together and he wants to go back into that side of it. Then he has the idea to go get Uma's, but we'll see what happens with that later. Okay, now this scene right here, Jules, this was the biggest scene of Dicky looking shady. So he says his brother has always been his business.
My brother's always been my business. Miracle Ben, child star Ben. So I spent my life protecting him.
And like you said, he mentions the adoption. So Loretta being the mother, I think is all but true at this point. I would be surprised at this point if that's not the case, you know?
I would too. Yeah.
But he's bitter. You know, he's bitter. The way he's talking.
That's because I was there cleaning up the mess, making him look good. But he still gets all the credit for everything.
You can tell he has resentment, and that's motive, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, you can also tell that he really did care about Ben. But like
He did, yeah.
Did that outweigh the bitterness? I'm not sure.
Bitterness plus Loretta probably being his mother and the way Ben treated Loretta, that's basically two
That's true.
motives right
That's
there.
true.
Okay, and this interaction between him and Mabel right here was, I think, the biggest red flag. And we've already had a couple of red flags. He is pushing that they already got the killer.
That's the only silver lining, that maniac's locked up.
I guess I never bought that Greg was a killer.
Right? He's pushing it. Mabel wants to find the real killer. She mentions the hanky theory. Dicky gets all defensive.
The cops say Ben died at 12:06, and Greg was seen leaving the Arconia right after that. You do the math. I'm sorry, Mabel. There's no story here.
Like super defensive, right?
Yeah.
So like a little too much.
Yeah, and it strikes me as odd because, well, I mean, for the obvious reasons, but also because like he seemed to be like blaming it on himself when he thought that Greg was the killer. He's like, I should have known better. Like he's been stalking him forever. Like, don't you think he would jump at the chance to take that off of himself?
Jesus, Greg had been following my brother around for years. I should have sensed he might turn dangerous, and when I took my eye off the ball for 1 second, he killed my brother.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, maybe this wasn't my fault,
Yeah. And then he actually gives Mabel some further evidence, clues, whatever, by saying he always had his watch set 20 minutes early so he could be fashionably late. And that comes into play later. So it's just like tons of Dicky stuff this episode, like all over the place, really. It's damning, it doesn't look good. But again, is it too early? I don't know. It might not be. We only have 3 episodes left. So it's like at some
but
point.
We've also gotten damning evidence on everybody else too.
That's true. Yeah. I'm really, really leaning towards Dicky at this point. Like I am.
Yeah.
Over Tobert. So then we get the scene with Charles going to Uma, asking for her hanky, says it could be a big clue. She sold it for $7,000.
Mabel thinks it may belong to the killer. Who'd you sell it to?
One of those snake dorks upstairs.
Is the person who bought it buying it for a different reason other than that? And who bought it? We do get that answer, right? We see at the end that Dicky had it. So we'll talk about it. So he's the one who bought it. Then we get a quick scene with Oliver talking to Mel Brooks on advice for Matthew Broderick. Basically, like, you're screwed. If he's trying to put his spin on everything, it's not going to work out. So
yeah. Have you seen The Producers?
I have. Yeah.
It's such a good show. It really is. So I thought that was funny that they included that in there.
Okay, now this is the scene where Mabel figures out the time thing on Ben's watch. So she's looking at the pic of Ben dead.
The police said Ben died at 12:06, but that's because it was the time on Ben's watch when he fell and it stopped.
Noticed the time on the watch. She puts it together. Greg couldn't have been there. He sets his watch 20 minutes early.
Dicky said Ben always set his watch 20 minutes early, which means he died at 12:26.
So they think it was 12:06, but it was really 12:26. Couldn't have been Greg. And we all knew that. We all knew it wasn't Greg.
Yeah.
So it's cool that that's solidified at this point. Then Tobert gets the info on the watch. He and Mabel are just focused on starting their podcast, the Bloody Mabel podcast, because she broke up with the gang, which I think they'll get back together soon. But that's that.
I hope so.
I hope so. Again, this episode, they really pulled back on him. Like he did nothing suspicious this episode at all. Really.
Yeah, and like Mabel's pushing him away too. So
Yeah.
like that could be a good sign that like he maybe didn't have anything to do with this.
I think so. Yeah. I'm with the theory that he's just working for Cinda Canning. I'm with that. I think that's more plausible at this point.
Which makes sense because he suggested the Bloody Mabel podcast and
Exactly.
Cinda Canning had brought that up. So
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we get with Tobert this episode. We see him again, but really no big evidence with him at all, like other than just wanting to start this new podcast. Really, that's it. Okay, then we get another bit of evidence, which could go two ways in this part right here. The first drawing of the CoBro, which was apparently drawn by Ben. Right? It's R. Glenroy. R could mean Richard. Richard could mean Dicky.
What, the B is an R? What? Okay, so it's an R for what? Like Richard, Dicky.
They all think it's him, but it could just be the other twin, right?
well, it says B. It does say B Glenroy. I'm assuming they're referring to it possibly have been R previously, and then he drew over it.
And
to
then
put
he
a B
drew
on
over
it.
it. Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Okay.
So
Yeah, it makes sense.
I could totally see him doing that though. Feels
Yeah,
like a bad move.
it does feel like a Ben move for sure. But in this moment, Mabel's like, okay, Greg definitely didn't do it. Let's get him out of prison.
But first things first, let's record,
Yes.
get you out.
So that's that. And they really see it as motive for Dicky. And it seems like next episode, they're going to be pushing that agenda to try to see what they can do with that information, see if they can get him to break a little bit. But again, maybe it was a little too much with Dicky this episode.
A tad.
It's not like
a
it's the
tad.
finale. You know what I mean? If it was the
Well,
finale, sure.
that's what kind of makes me think that maybe they're just trying to like mislead us.
Yeah, they could be. And dude, they've misled us a lot this season, like over and over again. Over and over again.
I know.
Crazy.
I know.
I'm really enjoying the last couple episodes, though. I think it's really gotten right back up to where it was.
Yeah, I really liked this one a lot.
Yeah, me too. So Oliver has what Mel Brooks said in mind about Matthew Broderick being a problem. So he says, hey, you asked too many questions, go home. And then he fires him.
And Broderick, you're fired.
So that's the end of Matthew Broderick. And Charles is back. He gets rehired. And then I love it. Did you catch it? Charles says to Matthew Broderick what Matthew Broderick says at the end of Ferris Bueller.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.
I thought that was fun. Yeah. That was
I like that a lot. Yeah.
fun little nod. Then the quick shot of Mabel, Theo, and Tobert working on the pod, and she goes off to the other side of the room, looks at the picture of the gang, clearly misses them. I think after they hear this podcast, they will go. They even brought it up that they need to do a peace offering or just apologize. And this is the peace offering I'm talking about. Oliver tells Charles why he erased it. He shows him the scrapbook.
I took this from Loretta's apartment.
Charles isn't convinced by it at all.
I don't think she did it.
Why don't you just talk to her about it?
If you're worried, why don't you just talk to Loretta? I wish I'd just talked to Joy.
And why don't we give this to Mabel as a peace offering?
Or we could just suck it up and apologize.
They go to do that. Go to her apartment. She's already gone. The new person's in there, so she moved out. Right. As of this point, they're still not made up, but they're building towards that happening. So, and then towards the end of the episode, you hear the Bloody Mabel podcast, and she points out that Greg wasn't there.
But Greg wasn't even in the building when Ben was pushed down that elevator shaft.
The police want to open up the case again.
And it's time to reopen the Glenroy case.
In the theory video, we got word that Detective Williams will be making a comeback this season. This is why it's going to happen, because the case is reopened. Good information there. And then we get the smoking gun. Dicky has the hanky with blood on it. And it's damning. It's really damning. Doesn't look good at all.
I can't think of any other reason why he would want to buy that, except for the fact that it's a way to hide evidence. I mean, it's not like he wants something to remember Ben by. He's got all this stuff that he's auctioning off.
Yeah.
So it does look a little sketchy to me.
So one last thing I want to say before we wrap up. I am going with that Ben was talking about cookies when he says, you're going to ruin me and I'm going to like it. He was talking about cookies. And
I really hope that's true.
He wrote the message because Matilda and a couple other people pointed out that his handwriting looks a lot more similar than Loretta's. So no Loretta at all this episode, but we'll get her again probably next week.
So like, why do you think he wrote that then?
Fucking pig?
Yeah.
Because he ate the cookies. Yeah.
That actually makes so much sense.
Yeah. I think
I'm
that's
so
that.
sad I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I think that's it. I mean,
I love that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's something to throw us off. It's something to make people think Loretta did it because it looks like her handwriting with the F and the P.
Yeah.
But everything else, I'll put the pictures up. Everything else kind of looks like Ben's handwriting a little more. So that's that. So let me know what you guys think. We will do another theory video as soon as you guys want one. If you really want one this week, let us know in the comments and we'll do it. 3 episodes left, guys. Just 3. We are deciding on what show to cover next. If there's anything you want us to do, let us know in the comments and we'll do it if we can. But again, it has to be something week by week. It can't be something that is put out all at once. That's the only parameters around it, really. And hopefully it has an air of mystery to it. So, okay, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Later.
Bye, guys.
So where are your friends? Murder them too?
I bet you would have made a much better Ferris.
Damn, that's cold.
That's motive.
He's not just my manager, he's also my brother.